Today, we're going to make a 3D character from scratch and animate him using only AI. We're going to use Night Cafe for AI image generation, Runway ML for AI video generation, Topaz Labs for increasing the resolution of videos, Photoshop, and After Effects. All of these have free trials, but if you want to create anything beyond a few animated shots, you'll have to pay for them. On Night Cafe's site, they say, in short, yes, you can sell your creations or use them commercially, but I wanted to be sure. So I emailed them. Angus from Night Cafe emailed me back and said, most model creators are not open about what their models were trained on. However, Google do claim that they trained their models on ethically sourced data. If your clients are worried about this, then Google Imagen 3 and Google Imagen 3 Fast are the best models to use. Thankfully, they're actually very good models. We'll talk more about this soon. Make an account with Night Cafe Studio. You can make a quick temporary account and get some free credits to get started. Once you've made an account, you'll see this screen. Then on the left, choose the Model menu button, and in the center, find the SDXL 1.0 model. This is the Stable Diffusion XL, a foundation model developed by Stability AI, which, as I mentioned earlier, has not been proven to be trained on copyright-free material, meaning we should not use it for commercial work due to ethical and legal reasons. But as Angus mentioned in his email, if you choose the Google Imagen 3 model, then you should be fine for using this for commercial projects and corporate work. But I'm no lawyer, so what do I know? Contact Night Cafe if you have legal questions. I've just had more luck with SDXL 1.0, and the rest of the process going forward is pretty much the same, so I'm going to go with that one. As you can see, websites like this one get their AI models from several different companies, which are all specialized in something different. It's like having access to artists with different skills and abilities. You just have to play around with each and read up on them to learn their strengths and weaknesses. Start by typing something like man standing. For the style, select CGI characters. Then click More Settings. For number of images, select 4. For runtime, select short. And for aspect ratio, 16:9. Now finally, just hit the Generate button. You'll get a few options. I like this man with the truck here. You might notice that face is a little messed up. You can try to fix the faces with this option, so let's do that. Choose number of faces. Going higher with the creativity slider will deviate further from the original face, but will also reduce the likeness. You can also change the prompt it generated when you chose CGI characters. And if you want to keep something specific out, add whatever that is to the negative prompt, but it doesn't always give you something good. Yikes. So we probably won't use that right now. You can also do creative upscale, which usually tries to just make it more realistic looking. Oh God, let's not do that. I like the original the way it is, so I'm just going to upscale the image. Hit the upscale button on the bottom left, and it will increase the resolution for better quality. Oh, very nice. What's really cool is you can animate right here in Night Cafe. They teamed up with Runway to use their Gen 3 Alpha Turbo model. Just hit Animate at the bottom. Type in something like man waves. I'll just choose 5 seconds, animate, and it's actually pretty amazing. It's zooming in because when you specify something like man waves, it thinks the most important thing is the man and the waving. So it tries to emphasize that by zooming to it. To stay in a wide shot, you may have to add the words wide shot or full body shot. It uses a lot of credits though. We're going to sign up for the actual Runway website later and pay for the subscription so we get unlimited animations. It's really necessary if you're going to do any kind of serious AI animation work. Let me know in the comments if you're having fun creating AI art. But we want more control over the character. We're going to make it so that we can put him in any environment doing any kind of animation. Let's start by bringing our exported high-res image into Photoshop. If you want to follow along with the rest of the tutorial using this image, you can find it in the description below. And bring up the Layers panel. Drag this image down to the plus icon to create a new layer out of it to make it easier to work with, and we'll have a backup of the original. We can hide the original right now. Go to the Object Selection tool in your Tools panel. If you don't see it, you might have to hold this icon down to get all the selection options. Just mousing over your character, you will see an outline of him in pink. That's the AI recognizing him. You can just select, then right-click and select inverse. And hit delete. As you can see, it left out some light areas of his hair. Let's fix this. We'll undo this. On a Mac, hold Option and scroll with your mouse to zoom in. Hold down the Object Selection tool. Pick the Quick Selection tool. Hold down Shift and you'll see a tiny plus sign inside the circle instead of a minus sign. When it's a plus sign, it means we are adding to the selection area, which is currently the man. We're working with a small area, so I'll go up top to change the size of the brush and the hardness. Now, holding down Shift, I'll select the side of his head, and bam, it's fixed. I'll do the same with the other side, and this will be enough for Runway to work with and create an animation for us. But if you need to get even more perfect for a project, just make the brush smaller, and using the negative brush, select the small areas outside of his body that are left over, and it will remove them. In the original selection, it included this area between his arm. So let's make the brush bigger and subtract this area. As well as this strange elbow thing we got going on here. And anything else you don't want to include in your animation. Now that we have just our man that we want to animate, we will right-click and select inverse again, and delete, and bam. For Runway Gen 3 Alpha, an image has to be 7,680 by 7,680 or smaller. So we'll go to canvas size and make sure it is below that number. Uncheck relative, and you'll see the width is too big. Bring it down to 7,680. Doing this crops the image, however. So if your character is huge, this might cut them off on the sides. Use the image size options instead. Now that the frame is the right size, scale them up, but leave some buffer around the edges like this. In Layers panel, hit the plus sign for New Blank Layer. Put it beneath our man. In the color picker, on the lower left, pick a bright green color, or whatever color that is not present on your character. It could be blue, but green usually works best for when we are removing it or keying it out later. Now pick the bucket tool, and with that blank background layer selected, just click to make it green. Now to export this masterwork, hit Command-Option-Shift-W on a Mac, or go up top to File, Export As, and we're going to choose PNG to preserve as much data as possible, but you can export as JPEG for smaller files. Uncheck transparency to reduce the file size. The image size looks correct. And hit export. Now this file structure really matters with AI, since it can get messy with the many files we are going to create. I like to have a character folder, then in there, I make a folder with every still image we made of them. Later I'll make a folder for every animation they do as well. If you're not meticulous about this, it can get pretty out of control. Here we have Ricky standing. And I'll call it Ricky standing on green screen. And export it. Or for a faster export, go to File, Export, Quick Export, PNG. Now let's go to the Runway ML site where we can start animating. After you make an account, click on Generative Video on the left under Tools. There we will click Select Asset in the center of the screen, or drag and drop the character image we just created. there are a few options up in the top left. Gen 3 Alpha is supposed to be more powerful and take longer than Gen 3 Alpha Turbo. But when it comes to these green screen characters, I find that since we are trying to just make this character do different movements and gestures, the Turbo is actually better and conveniently much faster. Gen 3 Alpha is better though at creating wide shots or whole scenes with multiple people or vehicles.
But just so you can see, we will start with regular Gen 3 Alpha, the more powerful, slower kind. In the text box underneath, you don't actually have to write anything, but it will just do something random. Let's write wave high happily on solid green background. This will force it to keep the green screen background and not do some other weird stuff. Every once in a while though, it likes to go a little bonkers. Hit generate, and it's here on the right in the queue. If you pull the center bar, it's easier to see. While that generates, let's run another instance. This time, let's change the model to Turbo. A cool feature is that you can change the image you imported to be what the video will start with or end with. So if it's set to first frame, it will start there and animate out from that. If it's set to last frame, your character will do the action and land how he is in the image. It usually seems to work best set to first frame, but play with last frame and see what you get. So all I did was change the model to Turbo, and now I'm going to hit generate. So we now have 2 in the queue. And look at Turbo go. He's finishing up while the other is only at 33% complete.
Okay, let's play it. His hand is a little large, but it's basically what I asked for. Because I asked for happy, he is smiling and waving pretty enthusiastically, which is pretty cool. If this is the first time you are making an AI animation, it's a very important moment. I want you to realize that paradigm shift that's happening here in your role in the process. You are no longer a quote-unquote animator, in the sense that you are moving the body parts of a character using keyframes and such, basically puppeteering him. You are now a director, because what does a director do? They give direction to their actor, who then uses their own mind and talents to act out the scene in the way they believe they should, based on your direction. This is important going forward because it's a fundamental shift in where we're going regarding animation in the future. If you enjoy the art of animating by hand, as I do myself, there will always be a place for that, and work as well, just as there always has been for traditional drawing animation. But the fun of AI is bringing your story to life 100 times faster than before. You are at an amazing place where you have this knowledge and this skill before 99% of other animators out there. But now, just like on a film set, comes the trial and error of doing multiple takes with your actor. But believe me when I say it's way faster than animating by hand.
And this actor never gets tired.
Now try different prompts to see if you can get something you like. Pretend like you are describing the action to an actor. If something really seems off or isn't working, we may need to alter a part of him in Photoshop.
As you can see, the regular Gen 3 didn't come out as nice with the hand as the Turbo did.
It's almost like it's trying too hard.
But regardless, I like to save every generation in case I can find a use for it later. So let's hit the little down arrow and make a folder. Under characters, and Ricky will add a new folder. Also, I like to add his name to these folders because it can sometimes get confusing with so many characters and folders with similar movements. And this just makes it easier to find the folder in my folder tabs or search for it. I'm using the Brave browser, which has this nice feature where it asks me every time I download something where I want to save it so it doesn't just get piled up in my downloads folder. So let's say we don't like the way some things are animating. Let's go back to Photoshop and change them. Grab the box selection tool and select something you don't like. In this case, I'll work on his hands. I'll draw a box around his deformed hand, then hit generative fill on the pop-up, type in hand, and let's see what happens. We get some weird stuff, mainly because hands are the toughest thing for AI, but it just has to be close enough to something normal, and Runway will work with it and actually change it into something better. You can see in your layers panel that it made a new layer with that change that you can toggle on and off. If you want more hands options, just hit generate again. But it will live inside that layer, and to switch them you have to keep using the little arrows. Or you can duplicate that new layer, which has all the hands in case you like 2 options and want to keep them isolated.
So hide that new hand layer and click your character layer again. Now when we generate again, it will create a new layer.
Let's try cartoon hand this time. Oof. Let's try again.
Okay, this one isn't so bad, but let me see what the original hand generation looks like in comparison by toggling on and off the eyeball on that layer. I'll just go with this one, I think, but I mainly wanted to fix his right hand, so we'll do the same thing for that.
Yikes, it's demonic. Let's try cartoon hand this time. Alright, after a few tries, let's just see what Runway can do with a slightly more normal looking hand. Let's save this new image as V2 of Ricky, green screen, standing. Let's import this new one into Runway. First remove the old one, then drag in the new one. I will change the prompt to say wave high on solid green background with the Generation 3 Alpha Turbo model. Let's run a few instances to see some options.
Okay, not bad. Runway likes to zoom into the character, I've noticed, and while it may not be what I want, it can be really useful if you can fit the zoom into your story.
Because if you tried zooming into a static shot of him, you're going to lose a little bit of resolution. This way, however, the AI is zooming in, and it's keeping the clarity of the character, as if we were using a camera to zoom into a model in a 3D animation program.
It's kind of creepy magic if you ask me.
And it looks amazing. So we will try to work with the camera move it gave us. Speaking of resolution, it gives us something around 1280 by 720, which is kind of low res by today's standards. So what I'm going to use is Topaz Labs, an amazing program. Will increase the video resolution using AI, of course. You can download the free trial of the app at topazlabs.com/topazvideoai.
So let's open Topaz and just drag our clip in. If you're making something bigger like a music video and have hundreds of clips, it might be best to edit your video first with the low-res video clips that come out of Runway.
Then bring your final render into here. It will be much faster and take up much less space on your drive. So it's actually really nice that they come out of Runway at a lower res for this reason. So in the output dropdown, just select 3840 by 2160, also known as 4K. If you have any issues, there's a ton of settings like add noise, recover detail, and you can even change frame rate, which is a game changer when dealing with editing footage of varying frame rates. So let's hit export. It will export to where the clip is with an underscore prob4 after the original name.
And there's our actor in amazing 4K. Next, it's time to work on our background.
I'm going to bring our original Night Cafe image into Photoshop and use the Object Selection tool, again to select Ricky, to remove him, as well as this mechanical box next to him. So I'll click on him and the box, but if I just hit Generate, which normally removes whatever is selected, you will see an outline of him. To fix this, I have to right-click and hit Select and Mask.
Alrighty, here we can expand the selection around his body and feather it for a more perfect removal of him.
I'll move the feather slider about halfway to around 37 pixels and the shift edge up to 100%. And you can see the selection around him has increased. Then hit OK. Then find the generative fill pop-up. You can move it around if you want and hit generative fill, and without typing anything, hit generate. And he's gone.
He was being kind of toxic anyway, so we had to let him go.
Then you can use the little arrows on the same pop-up to choose which generation of the missing truck area you like more. I'm going to go with number 2. I want to change some features on the truck, so we will use the same technique that we used on the hands. First, let's combine the original image and the new overlay truck layer that is covering Ricky to stay organized. Your future self will thank you. Hit the lock icon on the background layer, select both, and drag them to the folder icon at the bottom. With it selected, click it again to rename it to Truck 1 or whatever your background image is. Then drag that onto the plus icon at the bottom to keep this as a backup. On the new layer, right-click it and hit Merge Group at the bottom. Now we have the background as one solid layer. I don't really like how this side window looks, so we will change it. Go up to the top left and get your box selection tool again. Select something about your background you'd like to be different. Hit Generative Fill and type in what you want to see. I'm going to type in Window and hit Generate. I'm going to flip through the options. I like number 1. Hit the eyeball in the Layers panel to turn the generated layer on and off to see the difference. I'll do the same thing to this metal object here. I want it to be a spare tire, so I'll type that in. And hit Generate.
Awesome.
Let's go with number 2. Now we have our background. Let's save this in a folder titled Environments, and a folder in there called Truck, or whatever your background is.
Then let's save this as a PNG to bring into After Effects. Again, if you want to follow along with the rest of the tutorial using this image, you can find it in the description below. Alright, it's time to get crazy. Let's jump into After Effects. Set up your windows the way you like them. Let's save this file.
Here's the folder structure I like that you can pick up from the template AE file in the description. I add a comps folder and a pre-comps folder with hyphens before the name so they stay at the top. Then I make a folder for characters, environments, logos, music, references, and sound effects. Then I'll drop our Ricky waving footage into a new folder under the characters folder. Call it Ricky. Then do it again and call it waving. Then I'll drop it on a new comp and we're ready to go. Fit it to the window.
And by hitting Command on a Mac and the letter K, or Control on a PC and K, you can see it's the correct resolution.
Now we want to key out the green screen. We want some varying contrast behind him to test it, so right-click, go to New, and Solid. White is fine. Put it under Ricky. Select the Ricky footage, go to your Effects Controls panel, hold down right-click, and go to Keying and Key Light. Under Screen Color, grab the dropper and select the green. As you can see, we're left with these black bars on the sides, so zoom out a little, then grab the box selection tool up top. And just select our character, making sure to cut off the black bars.
So that looks good. Now you're going to notice a bit of a discoloration here. That's why we picked the white background, so we could see this better.
We just have to adjust the key light a little bit. So set your resolution to full and zoom in to see it a little better. And normally if you just increase the screen gain by a couple of points, then it's all gone. You can see that the more you push the screen gain up, the less grain there is behind him, but now his face is becoming discolored. Alright, now it's time to add the background. Let's go ahead and find our truck image and drag it in. Drop it underneath your character in the layers. Scale it to fit.
Now we can see his chest is see-through. That's unfortunate for him.
Let's select him again, go back to our key light effect, and increase the screen balance.
that does it.
So our goal here will be to scale up the background image to match the camera move that's on Ricky,
Like this, which is what we will end with. With the background selected, hit P and S, and you'll get position and scale properties to come up for that layer. Then with the playhead at the beginning of the timeline, hit the stopwatches on those properties. At about 4 seconds, the AI zoom seems to stop, so I'll put the playhead there and scale up the background, just roughly for now. I want him starting a little closer to the truck, and I want him to look more proportional to it. So go back to the beginning of the timeline, scale it, and move it until it looks right. Now, it's not zooming as much as before, so we have to go to the end of its zoom and push it a little further. And move it to the side a little. Then to get a nice, smooth slowdown in the zoom to match the one on the character, select the last 2 keyframes, hold down, right-click, go down the keyframe assistant, ease in, and release your mouse button, and bam! Bet you didn't know that little trick, did you? Next, we have to adjust the landing speed of the zoom, so we'll hit the graph icon just above the timeline. And since we already had those keyframes selected, they show up here like this. We just want to pull on the ends of the yellow handles all the way to the left. I like to bring them up then down again because for some reason they act a little funny if I don't. Now we have a large bump on the left side, meaning it's going to move a lot faster at the beginning and slower towards the end. So hit the graph icon again, and you can see it's zooming too fast, so I went too far with it. So let's go back into the graph and pull the yellow handles to the right a little, trying to keep them snapped to the line they are on. Hit the graph icon again, and you can see we are getting closer to what we want. I'm going to adjust how it is on its landing keyframes. I'll go into the graph again and adjust these again, but we need to do the same to the starting keyframes it looks like. So select them, right-click, keyframe assistant, ease out this time. Back to the graph. Try to imagine what the character's zoom looks like in graph form in your mind so you can mimic it. Just keep playing it back and forth to get an idea about what it needs. I think the end is a little faster, so I'll pull those handles to move the graph bubble that way. That's looking pretty close. A few more tiny adjustments to the truck's position. Put the playhead at the end of where you're working and hit N to make that the work area. And when you preview, you'll just preview this area. Let's give the background some blur. So with the background layer selected, go to your Effects Controls panel. Hold down right-click, go to Blur and Sharpen, and go to Gaussian Blur and release the right-click. In that panel, click the stopwatch next to Blurriness. Since you already have the layer selected, hit the letter U a few times until you see all the active keyframes for that layer. Slide that keyframe back, because that is the 0 amount of blurriness we will start with. And go back to the blurriness effect and put it at 17 or something like that. Now we're going to place these so that as the background zooms in, it gets blurrier. I'll move it around a little and maybe increase it to 20. I see that his feet are sliding a little, and the only real way of fixing that is to trim the intro, or move everything down, so we don't see his feet. So we'll move it. Right-click in this little space between the layers and the buttons. Go to New, and Null Object. Let's scale it up before we use it, just so it's easier to work with. And with your character and background layer selected, pick-whip them to the null. Then just grab your null and put them where you want them. You pretty much get the idea, so I'll just fast forward this part, where I tinker with everything a little more. I basically just do the same thing I did to the background now to our character to center him a little better at the end. If your background is being stubborn, and just still doesn't seem right, because the AI zoom is doing multiple complicated camera moves, just add another null, pick whip, parent the background to it, and animate the null to give it just that last tiny move it needs, without messing with your original keyframes and the graph editor. Sometimes, it's not even possible to get one set of keyframes to do exactly what you want, even with the graph editor, which is why a null assistant is needed. And hot diggity dog, I like it. You know something? I'm really proud of what you did here today. I get all choked up when people get to the ends of my tutorials, especially when they sign up for 700 free VFX clips at my site. Seeing people receive thousands of dollars of free stock footage, it really gets to me, you know? It just makes me really happy. So subscribe to Dreamfire Films, like this video, sign up for free weekly VFX, comment below, but most importantly, just keep animating.
Voice swallows light, whispers die, rage against the